Welcome in the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Braden. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter, and I'm joined as always by my cousin Shane, who goes by Big Orange Balls on Twitter. What are you up to, you big Tennessee homer?
Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Oh, man, have you heard about the latest conspiracy in the SEC? This damn ref, Shane, he was celebrating Tennessee touchdowns, and Alabama, not the fans are one thing, Shane. I get the fans being upset, but I'm seeing multiple. You go to my timeline, you'll see multiple Alabama media members questioning these referees, and I can't believe it. I'm having a good time. They're melting down over there.
Well, I told you, Mike, when you have a tough loss, there's stages to this thing, and that's part of it. You know, you got the handful of plays you go back to, you keep replaying, and you slow it down, and it looks like a problem.
Yep.
You know, don't think that we're immune as Tennessee fans. We had a whole bunch in our pocket. We were ready to show, that catch prior to the end zone, and you know this thing. Look, Mike, we're what a day. We're going into Wednesday here, and this thing's still lingering around. I know it's a fantastic game, but you know Alabama doesn't face this much. You know, Tennessee, we'd already be done. Like, we would have bitched, we would have moaned, but, you know, it's Wednesday. We're now prepping for the next game, you know what I'm saying? Alabama doesn't lose that often, so naturally they're going to grieve a little longer than most. But don't worry about them. They'll be fine. When you come to the realization that no matter what you find on tape is not going to reverse the outcome, you can move forward with your life. Alabama, we told you coming into this game, you don't have to have this win. You don't.
Right.
All right? Let's practice. Let's learn from this mistake and all the penalties that you did take, because there was a lot of penalties in this game that were necessary and that were called for. So I think they cleaned that up. Man, this is a program that could bounce back quicker than anybody.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this thing, I've never seen. I made a joke this morning, Mike. I'm on the TikToks and the Twitters. I know I'm spending too much time on social media, but I'm on there and I'm looking at this thing. I'm in this algorithm loop, you know, where it's just almost everything's 10. I watch a regular video and I'm like 10 seconds in waiting for the Tennessee hook. You know, I'm like, it's got to be in here somewhere. But it's funny to me because I was like, you know, there's only 100,000 people at that game, but I've seen like 400,000 videos from that thing. So, you know, apparently me and you were the only ones that weren't there, Mike. So, yeah, here we are Wednesday. We're still breaking down the refs. I love it.
Yeah, and Shane, so kind of my idea, we'll talk about these games we got this upcoming weekend. Not the greatest slate of SEC games, but they still deserve our respect and attention. So we'll get to that in just a moment here, but I thought it'd be fun, Shane. We are in the middle of the season, essentially, SEC season. So I thought we'd kind of, you know, just look at the standings and, you know, what kind of stands out to us. Biggest surprises, can be a player, could be a team, could be a coach. Biggest disappointments, and the teams that could still climb the SEC standings, and the teams that could potentially fall down the SEC standings. So how's that sound to you?
Yeah, sounds good. Just a little hump day, you know, where it's Wednesday. It's the most boring day at work. Nothing's fun going on. Is there anything fun on Wednesdays anymore? Like, they don't do anything, right? Our favorite Chinese place opens up on Wednesdays, so that's always positive, you know? I think it's like half-price sushi, and it's not like high-quality sushi. No, sir. This is, you better have some Imodium in your back pocket sushi.
Well, before you start bunching all that, Shane, let's just focus on the SEC East for this segment here, and we'll get to the West in just a moment. I'm just going to break down the standings as they are right now, Shane. Georgia, of course, reigning national champions, number 1 in the SEC East. Tennessee, number 2 in the standings. Kentucky climbed their way back up to number 3 with games against 2 and 1 still on the schedule. South Carolina, number 4. Florida, number 5. Vanderbilt, number 6. And 7th, right now, Missouri, with an opportunity to climb up these standings, because you got some big-time games with some of the teams ahead of you. So, just looking at the SEC East right now, Shane, maybe what is your biggest surprise at the midway point in the SEC East?
Well, not to be a homer, Mike, but it's got to be the Tennessee Vols being undefeated at this point. Going into this season, I predicted Kentucky to be that second team in the East, and so I guess it's twofold, Mike. I guess I'm a little disappointed in the results that Kentucky had, and I know Will Levis got hurt, but I guess at this point I expected them to be undefeated. I really did. I expected them to be the team that's got a goose egg over there in the L column. Unfortunately, it's not. It's my Tennessee Volunteers. So I think that is to say anything different, Mike. You'd be lying.
Yeah, I think Tennessee easy. I could say biggest surprise too, because I certainly didn't see this run coming. But I'm going to go a different direction, Shane. Georgia, their defense. Now, I thought we were going to take a big step back. Now, I know they're loaded with talent. I figured by the end of the year they'd still have one of the best defenses in the SEC, if not the country. But I didn't see it coming together so quickly for Kirby Smart and company. I mean, after what we saw from Alabama on Saturday, I think you have to say Georgia's got the best defense in the SEC. I certainly didn't see that coming right out the gate. Did you?
No, I didn't. I thought they'd come back to earth a little bit, and I thought they'd lean a little bit more on the offense, and in fact, going in last season, if you're looking at attributes, you would say, Georgia A+ defense, maybe A- offense. It's still good, but not like world beaters,
Yeah.
And going into this season, I thought that would flip-flop. I thought we would see a lot more on the offense side and less on the defense, but it's the same recipe, Mike. It's good defense, good running, good fundamental football, and you gave up 39 points this season so far, which is amazing. So I'm right there with you. I think the defense is a big surprise for me. Well, I think we should break down each team. Instead of just bouncing around the SEC East, I think we've mentioned the top two, Georgia and Tennessee. I think we should just run down the thing here, the rankings.
Well, let me get to my disappointment first, Shane.
Oh, okay.
Because I got I was high on this team. I spoke highly of them at SEC Media Days. The Florida Gators, Shane, have disappointed me. Particularly when you come out, we were damn near the only non-Florida homer saying they're going to beat Utah, and they made us look like geniuses for about 7 days, you know what? And then the world came crashing down. Not that they're terrible. I know a lot of those fans are down on the team right now, but I think they'll bounce back. Very inconsistent. Obviously, that's a key. 1 week, you got no offense. The next, you got no defense. Anthony Richardson, Heisman. Anthony Richardson, should he be benched? I mean, it's 1 week after another.
Yeah.
I'm just terribly disappointed in what we've seen through the halfway point for the Florida Gators. But, yeah.
I'm with you. Yeah, well, I thought it would be different. I honestly thought Florida would have a slow start. Even though I predicted them to beat Utah, in the back of my mind, I was like, that's just a SEC homer talking. That I thought that would happen. And I thought Tennessee. I really thought that they would lose to Tennessee. I felt like this was going to be a program that progressively got better throughout the season. And that's why I said, this is a team you want to face early. But when they came out and they beat Utah, they put themselves under the microscope of being critiqued on every single week. And I think they kind of broke during that. They were good building up, but now, when they had all those expectations, it just felt like that's where the inconsistent Anthony Richardson came in. And to look at, remove Anthony for a second. You remove all names from the stat lines and from the wins and losses. You see a tight game against Mizzou. You get a loss against LSU. And you're looking at the stats. You'd think Anthony Richardson's not even on that team. Maybe he got hurt or something. It's just he's not been the X factor. We kind of, I don't know. We put him on a pedestal after that Utah. I know I did. We were preaching Heisman. We were saying all these great, wonderful things that are going to happen for the Florida Gators, and then all of a sudden it's just this roller coaster ups and downs. So I'm with you. I'm a little disappointed. Now I'm not disappointed with the record because this is kind of where I felt like they would be, but how they got to this point, I'm disappointed.
So let's look at the teams. I mean, I guess it could really be any team, but doesn't make much sense to look at the top of the SEC East when we say which one of these teams do you think you got the most confidence could rise up the SEC East standings. And again, I'm talking Kentucky number 3, South Carolina number 4, Florida number 5, Vanderbilt 6, Missouri 7. Which one do you got the most confidence that maybe by the end of the season they'll be at least a spot, if not 2 or 3 spots higher than where they currently are?
All right, so I'm looking at the East here, and my options were who again?
Kentucky, South Carolina, Florida, Vanderbilt, or Missouri.
So let's break this down here. The problem that Florida's running into is that schedule.
Yeah.
You've got Georgia next. You got Texas A&M, which is turning out to be a better team than we thought. South Carolina, which one of the teams you talked about, a biggest surprise. I think 4-2 South Carolina I'd put on the list. I thought they would definitely be a little worse than that, but I don't know. I've got to go. Kentucky is probably the one that. Now, I know Tennessee's coming up. Georgia's later in the season, but here's a program that is finally getting all their pieces together. So
you're sitting here saying you got more confidence in Kentucky to rise. That means they're going to finish second or first in the East than the rest of the East?
Other than Tennessee, I'm saying, let me clarify that. Other than Tennessee and Georgia?
Well, if they're so Kentucky's sitting at 3. And you're saying you got the most confidence they can move up this chart. That means they'll finish second or first. I mean, that's a tough hill to climb. I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm just wondering, is that what you're sitting here saying?
No, I ain't saying that.
Yeah, that's why
I ain't saying that. I see where you're going with this. See, this is why a little game prep's not a bad idea with Shane. When you start talking numbers and schedules, all right. So clearly, I think. But that's the problem. I think Georgia and Tennessee, not quite 1 and 2 anymore. I would say like not 1A, 1B, but maybe like 1A, 1C right now. But they did knock off Alabama, so hell, maybe I am saying 1A, 1B. But I don't know. I'm just overall, I do think Kentucky. People are overlooking Kentucky. Tennessee fans especially are overlooking Kentucky right now. And what they don't notice is that. When they got Rodriguez, now that he is just an absolute machine, an absolute unit, and you got Will Levis, back at quarterback and not with a broken finger and a boot on his foot, they're a pretty good team, and they can score a lot of points. So the defense is playing better as the season goes along, in my opinion. So I don't think, that's a tall glass of water, Mike, because, Tennessee, short of them overlooking Kentucky, which I don't think they will, there's always that possibility that's got to be lingering around that they could, because I like their schedule. Other than Tennessee and Georgia, they got it. It's a shoe-in for them. But but as you're talking, someone moving up the list, I see 2. I see Florida rising. I think they overtake South Carolina. And clearly, I think Missouri takes over Vanderbilt before the season's over. So I do see that, but I don't see a monumental shift in the SEC East.
Yeah, I think you were overthinking this one, Shane. I think because that was an easy layup there. My answer, Missouri, because you got Vanderbilt coming up here. I mean, this is a paramount game. We're about to preview it, but it is at home. You get that first conference win, and here they've lost 3 consecutive games by 1 score. Maybe they'll fold, but after 2 weeks to prepare for Vanderbilt, I gotta think they're gonna be a heavy favorite. Get that win. If they just correct a couple of things, I think Missouri could make a jump here. And I'm not saying they're going. Obviously, they're basically eliminated from winning the East. That's not the point. They're currently at 7. I think they can get Vanderbilt. I think they do go to South Carolina. They beat South Carolina last year. Who knows? Kentucky. I mean, hell, 1 week they're beating Mississippi State. The previous they're losing to South Carolina. So I don't know what the hell to make of a Kentucky. I think Missouri's got a shot, and based on what we've seen from Arkansas's defense, I mean, they're going to give up 28 points guaranteed basically every ball game. So, you're trying to outscore the Arkansas Razorbacks. There's a couple very, very winnable games for Missouri. So I think they are a clear team that could go up much higher in the SEC East standings by the end of the season. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I could see that. And one of the things I think that helps Mizzou with we're talking about, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about a handful of games here. We're talking about Missouri potentially beating Kentucky. One thing that would need to happen is just a classic trap game. Not that Vanderbilt's a trap game, but they got Georgia right around the corner. If they drop to Tennessee, there's going to be a lot of heads down that week, because they're building up that momentum again. They're starting to play better ball, and now they're going out to Columbia and probably going to be cold as shit. I would imagine that's a game that could easily pop up, and I mean, just like the Georgia. I mean, when that fan base gets pumped up out there in Columbia, it's a dangerous place to play. It really is. The crowd can make some serious noise, but you're going to need a lot of things to work in your favor. And I think these close games, they got to start closing those games, and that's one thing that he's not been able to do. Eli hasn't been able to do just yet, but it feels like this team is starting to gain confidence as the season goes along.
Now, is there any of those teams, and let's eliminate Vanderbilt or Missouri because they're already at the bottom. So we're saying Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, South Carolina, Florida. Any team you got the most confidence could fall a spot or two, or maybe even several spots. I hate to say this because we get people mad at us, but hey, we're just giving us our honest opinion here.
Several spots, Mike.
Or at least one or two,
Well, I'm saying obviously the Florida one scares me the most, just given their schedule. Here they just lost against LSU, and it wasn't fun. It was not. This was a team that I think if they replayed again, you're still coin tossing it, but I think Florida thought they had it, and they, especially coming out on fire like they did last week. I think that takes an emotional toll on you a little bit. And then you walk into Georgia, that's a freaking buzzsaw, man. There's just no way this is going to be a game. And then potentially Texas A&M, if they're continuing that same trajectory that they're on right now, there's a real shot Florida loses 3 games in a row. So I think that takes a toll, especially on a young team like the Florida Gators. And if you don't have that seniority, those upperclassmen to really get you going, then you could really spiral. So that's the one I'm worried about the most. And not saying South Carolina road's any easier, but they've already got Georgia done. Tennessee is still on the books, but there's some spots and there's some very winnable games, and South Carolina is going to be like that. They're going to be a roller coaster this season, and if they can close out more games, then I just think they're further along than I thought.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Shane. Florida, that was the team I identified, and for everything you just said, but one thing you didn't hit on, Shane, South Carolina, that would come after Georgia and Texas A&M. If you lose those games, you still got to assume that Florida in Gainesville is going to be favored over South Carolina, but South Carolina won last year. And those fans, those Florida fans, Shane, they can be some of the best fans in the country. But the standard in Gainesville is championships. And when you start dropping games left and right, man, they tune out pretty damn quick. So I'm not saying they're going to drop all these games, but hell, if they lose to Georgia, if they lose to A&M on the road, which is, I didn't say anything hot take-ish right there. I'm not saying no, it'll show up for South Carolina, but I just don't know how rowdy of an environment they're going to create. They may have already be tuned into recruiting season, so to speak. You know what?
Yeah. But also, the way their season has been going, it may be an Anthony Richardson pro day, and then he takes one of these teams, and then we're look like idiots, and they clip this thing and say, these guys are damn morons. So there's always that possibility, because the fact that Anthony Richardson is on that football team, I'm not giving up on him. But to add to, now that I just pumped them up, to add a little salt to the wound here is the fact that they are thin. That, this is one of the problems I thought we would have with the Florida Gators as the season progressed. Some of those that competitive depth, this roster just does not have it. So there's also that on the back end that I'm worried about.
All right, now that you got a firm grasp of what we're doing here, Shane, let's go to the SEC West here. Biggest surprise, could be a player, team, coach, whatever you want. Let's run down the standings real quick. Ole Miss, number 1 in the SEC West. Alabama, number 2. LSU, number 3. Mississippi State, number 4. Texas A&M, number 5. Arkansas, 6. And Auburn, number 7. Biggest surprise at the midway point in the SEC West.
Mike, you ain't going to like this, but it's your Arkansas Razorbacks.
Well, that's a disappointment then. No. We're getting to that one. So what's the biggest surprise?
We're doing surprising. I mean, that is a surprise that they're hanging out the bottom of the West. But
yeah.
All right. Apparently, I've still not grasped the topic of the show. So, more word from our sponsors. No. All right, since we're talking success, let's just go right to the top here. Lane Kiffin and them Ole Miss Rebels. It's funny because I've been poo-pooing them all season long, Mike. I keep even now. I'm like, I need one more week, So I would say that's obviously. I thought we'd have a loss by now. I really did. I thought the Rebs would have dropped one, but they're sitting pretty. But I don't want to say that's my favorite. My favorite right now is the LSU Tigers. Brian Kelly's squad, thin, not no high expectations, even though they have a lot of that in Baton Rouge. But I thought in my heart that this was going to be a program that would finally start hitting on all cylinders about this time, that midway mark, and they have excelled. They really, I'm telling you, that Tennessee game, was an eye-opener for me. Just that they had potential, and then just to see it fulfilled this week with the Florida Gators. I'm telling you, LSU, if they continue doing what they're doing right now, can win some pretty big games in the West.
Well, I like how you just selected half of them, Shane, because I didn't know which way you were going to go. But
where are you going? Where are you going, Mike?
I echo everything you said. Ole Miss, that's the easy answer. I did not see this coming. I thought 6th, maybe in the West, maybe even 7th if things go poorly for old Lane Kiffin. So he's doing a hell of a job. It's got to be, I think, Lane Kiffin and Josh Heupel is the only 2 options right now for SEC Coach of the Year. And remember, we're only at the midway point. But LSU, that's another one. I mean, so many moving pieces. You come out, you drop the first game. People fired up. The casuals ready to fire Brian Kelly 1 game into his 10-year, $100 million contract and all that. So, man, he's done a hell of a job turning that thing around. And I think, he had to face some tough questions, Shane, after losing big to Tennessee at home. But I think we've come to realize Tennessee just a really, really good team. So no real shame in that. Would have liked to seen a better performance, no doubt. But you kind of erase that memory by going on the road, beating Florida in a rivalry game. Still a lot to play for for LSU. So yeah, those are definitely the two biggest surprises. So who's your biggest disappointment in the West?
And here I kind of teased it, but the more I think about it, there was only one sucker down there at SEC Media Days to say that Texas A&M really had a shot to win the SEC championship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's two thumbs at this guy. I've regretted it ever since. I've been trying to get my money back from Vegas since I put that bet in. And I had a chance, Mike. I had a chance. I think it was like $50 I could have took it out. I was like, they still, they still control their own destiny. They're going to bounce back from this thing. And I regret not losing that money. So anyway, Mike, I got to go with Texas A&M. And the reason is, brother, I had higher expectations. Clearly, I wanted them to not only compete in the West but win the thing. And now I think they're finally coming around to it. And I probably should have thought about the youth of that team. We've been reminded every Saturday they play, but it's a program that I was expecting to hit the ground running a lot sooner. And I mean, when you lose to App State, brother, how can you not put Texas A&M as biggest disappointment?
Yeah. Well, because I'm going to say Arkansas, Shane. That's why. Yeah, well, I mean, they lost to, there's no shame in losing to Alabama, even though I was dumb enough to think they could beat Alabama going into that matchup. A&M, you had no business losing that game. Mississippi State, you didn't have your quarterback. We can make excuses for everybody, but sitting here number 6 in the West when I picked you second, now the back half, you got opportunity to win some ball games, rise up this chart. I think they can do it, but if you convince me that they'll lose to Ole Miss, they lose to LSU, I'd buy it, Shane. Yeah. And they still got other tough games down the stretch. And hell, the longest winning streak Auburn has in the SEC right now is against Arkansas. So that is not a gimme by any means, and that is on the road. So you can convince me that Arkansas may even finish lower, which makes me look even dumber. So Arkansas right now, biggest disappointment. But how about this one, Shane? We've been bashing Alabama left and right. I'm sure we've already lost their audience, but they've been a disappointment to me, Shane. This was supposed to be revenge tour. We're going to kill everybody. Yeah. And, they came out in the opening game, won by like 49-0. I was like, yep, this is old. This is the revenge tour. And then right out, they nearly lost to Texas. A&M had them on the run, had an opportunity to win that football game. Of course, Tennessee beat them. Alabama still they control their destiny. If they beat Ole Miss and they win out, they'll go, and maybe they will, but they have been a major disappointment, I think, up to this time. And if there's some serious red flags with Alabama, and just the way things have been going the last 2 years, really.
Mm-hmm. And it feels like that, Mike. It feels like just all around SEC, we made a lot of excuses for them early in the season. Yeah. Just against non-SEC foes. I feel like the conference as a whole, don't get me wrong. I still think we're the greatest conference, but I don't think we were as far along as we could have been or should have been. And Alabama is a prime example. Going down there to Texas, there's no reason that game should have been as close as it was. Right. And you would think that would be the wake-up call. And then we thought it was until it wasn't. And nothing against my Tennessee boys, but there's a reason we don't want to play Alabama, because they're an excellent football team. And I feel like we didn't get to see a full display of that Saturday. So I don't know. I don't know what this team needs, or if it can even do it. Maybe this is the Alabama that this is the new Nick Saban-led Alabama Crimson Tide, and maybe we just need to lower expectations of how good that dynasty is these days.
Right. So looking at the West, Shane, who's the team you got the most confidence could rise in the standings? And let's take out Ole Miss, because they're number one. You can't go any higher. Let's take out Alabama, because I think that's just an easy answer that everybody. I think most people that are not Ole Miss fans still expect Alabama to win the West, whether that's going to happen or not. I'm not saying it will. So let's look at LSU, number 3. Mississippi State number 4, A&M number 5, Arkansas 6, Auburn 7. Which team do you have the most confidence by the end of the season will be at least 1, if not 2 spots higher, maybe even 3 in the SEC West standings?
Well, Mike, you know that old saying, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on me. You remember that President Bush? He didn't know. Well, Texas A&M, brother, does not lose another game this season.
Ooh.
That is a bold take, a hot take, but I think there was a lot of growing up done down there in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah.
And I think that this is a program, when you look at that schedule, is prime and ready to pick. I like the Aggies to win out.
Man, you stole mine and once again. So, yeah, you know, I guess I will say Arkansas just because you went with A&M. But, you know, just looking at A&M's schedule, Shane, at South Carolina, you're favored. Ole Miss, you get them at home, and they may be coming off a loss. Who knows? Florida, we've already talked about them. At Auburn, UMass, and LSU at home. You're right. They're going to be either favored or, you know, a 1 to 2 point underdog the rest of the way. You got to like A&M's chances. If they play up to their potential, you're 100% right. They could and they probably should win every single game left on their schedule. But since you already went that way, I'll say Arkansas. The reason I put Arkansas second, though, is just I got no faith in that defense.
Right.
But Arkansas does get out at Auburn, Liberty. I mean, you should beat both those teams. LSU, they're going through a gauntlet right now. They look good, but who knows at the end of that gauntlet how they look. Ole Miss, that's always a ball game between Arkansas and Ole Miss. And LSU and Ole Miss are at home, so that's going to favor you. And then at Missouri, I know I kind of pumped them up talking about the East, but who knows? They could fall apart. Same deal almost with Arkansas. They're going to be either favored or a slight underdog in every single game the rest of the way. So I could see A&M or Arkansas really taking a climb up the rankings. Now, is there one that you got the most confidence is going to fall in the SEC West?
Oh, Mike, I've been teeing this one up all season, but it's them Ole Miss Rebels, man. I can hear them now. Shane, I can hear them mad typing now. Hotty toddy, gosh almighty, Shane hates the Ole Miss Rebels. No, I don't hate Ole Miss. I think you've got a fantastic program. I think you have exceeded expectations so far this season. And I have picked against you many, many times, and you have turned around and won. I mean, you need me. You need me to say you suck, because I don't think they suck, brother. I don't. I think it's one of the best 1-2 punches in the game when it comes to running. I think this defense is inconsistent at times, but we need quarterback play, and I've not seen it. I mean, Dart has got you here so far, but it will not lead you the rest of the way unless he takes that next step. And to feel like anything that you've watched you've walked away saying, you know, this is the next Matt Corral, you're crazy. What games have you been watching? So I think that's what catches Ole Miss, and not to mention their schedule really tightens up here. So I've got it here: LSU, Texas A&M, Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi State. There's 5 games that you easily could lose. So I'm not saying that you lose them all, but you will lose a handful of them. So Ole Miss drops.
Yeah, everybody looking at Ole Miss schedule right out the gate and saying, man, they caught a break. They forgot to look at the back half.
That's right.
No, but since you said Ole Miss, I'm going to win us back. Well, hell, they probably already jumped off. But the fans that are still there, Ole Miss fans that are still listening, I'm going to say Mississippi State, Shane, the most likely to drop off here. Just, you know, epic collapse against Kentucky. You should have won that game. And now you got Alabama on the road. You got Georgia coming to Starkville, and you got to go to Oxford. The way you're playing right now, particularly on the road, you could bring your A game against Georgia at home. You probably could still lose. You know what I mean? So I think it's going to be, even though they're already 4th, they're going to take a stumble. And I think Hell, maybe they give every one of those teams a game. Maybe they upset one or two of them. But at the end of the season, I think you're going to sit here and say, "What? How in the hell do we lose that LSU and that Kentucky game?" And that cost you an opportunity at a special season. And I'd be heartbroken if I was a Bulldog fan.
Yeah. No, you may be right. The whole state of Mississippi. Look at us, just shitting on the whole state. And they'll end up winning out. Yeah, Ole Miss and Tennessee in the SEC championship.
So let's take a quick look, Shade, at the upcoming slate. Like I said, it's not the greatest slate, but we do got 4 conference games here. We got the top 4 in the West going head to head. So this weekend, Shane, is going to play a big part in determining the SEC West outcome here. And let's start with the CBS SEC game, Ole Miss at LSU. And I know we talked about this on the Monday show, Shane. Ole Miss opened as a 2-point favorite on the road. Mm-hmm. That has swung completely. LSU's now the favorite by 1.5 points. So, basically a pick 'em here.
Yeah.
But I just love these SEC matchups, Shane, where both fan bases expect a win going into it. Should be one hell of a game, don't you think?
It really does, because that's usually what happens at the end of these. It becomes an epic game.
Yeah.
Just, and Ole Miss, here they are. They're number 1 in the West, brother. They have sole possession of that first spot. Mm-hmm. They got to keep winning to keep it. But that makes it a little bit tougher when there's an X on your back, and it's on their back right now. LSU Tigers are coming in there hot and heavy, brother. Coming off that Florida game, I just think they're on that momentum train right now. So it should. I mean, brother, this should make out to be the game of the week. They picked, for once, CBS got one right, brother.
Well, and here's the thing, Shane. No one's talking about LSU right now, which. They've dropped a couple games, so maybe that's fair. But they're sitting here at number 3 in the West. They're playing number 1. If they beat number 1, they host Alabama, number 2, Shane. I mean, I'm not saying LSU's going to win the West, but if they win this ball game, we have got to start putting that into the conversation that these LSU Tigers could play a factor in this SEC West race, which is it's pretty remarkable. Considering, the up and downs of their season at this point. But the offense in particular sure as hell looked good against Florida, didn't they, last week?
I see where you're going, brother, and I'm all for it. I'm all for it, I talked about this coming into the weekend. I've talked about it coming out of the weekend. A little shake-up in the SEC is not a bad thing, brother. Seeing Ole Miss, number 1 on the West, seeing Tennessee in a top 3 team, I mean, I embrace that. And it's funny because when you look at all these reactions after some of these games, especially that Alabama one, there were Georgia fans celebrating. There were Kentucky fans celebrating. Well, maybe not Kentucky. That's a terrible example. They hate Tennessee. They care less. But I did see Georgia. I did see Florida. When they announced it at the Florida game, LSU game, I saw that. So, people... The teams like that. The fandom likes that. So sitting there saying, is there a chance that the LSU Tigers can knock off Ole Miss, potentially beat Alabama, and they're the team sitting there in the first spot? I don't know if it's possible. I think it would be a long shot, but I'm all for it. You know what I'm saying? Just because I like chaos in the SEC. Chaos in the SEC is just fun to watch.
Yeah. Now, why is it you think that Ole Miss getting the lack of respect, Shane? Is it the schedule? Is it they don't have a star quarterback? Is it, the defense is... Look at this stat, Shane. First 3 games, Ole Miss defense was allowing 3.6 yards per play. That's outstanding.
Right.
Now, the next 4, they're allowing 5.8 yards per play. So nearly double. Not quite double, but nearly double as the schedule has gotten a little bit tougher. The defense is starting to crack a little here. Why is it, do you think, that undefeated 7-0 Ole Miss in the top 10? That's all I hear from these fans. No one respects us. Everyone's talking down to us. Why do you think that is?
Because they're not fun. I think when you when you think Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss Rebels, you think about the amazing season they had last year, and not taken away from what's going on this year, but last year they were flashy, man. They were fun. Matt was running all over the place. They were throwing dimes. It was just a fun game. And now it's running. Now it's ground and pound, which I think is sexy. I think that there needs to be more running backs. I think there needs to be a little bit more of this old school ground and pound. And that's what makes Ole Miss dangerous. The fact that they can keep the ball away from you, because, it's not just the two running backs. You got Dart over here is just as capable of getting 100 yards rushing like he did last week. So it's a three-headed monster, and that's what Lane does. He's such a good coach because he looks at his roster. What am I good at? What am I not good at? I'm going to try to work on it, and I see it. There's been plenty of opportunities for Dart to improve, and I think there still will be. But what are we good at is running the ball, and that's what they're going to continue to do, is just the ground and pound. So it's not sexy, and every time they beat somebody, some fat ass like Shane gets on here and says, you know what, it was against Vanderbilt. You know what, it was against, XYZ. Auburn. Yeah, it's just whenever somebody comes out here and explains that Ole Miss has had a great win, but they played blank. So I think, there's a benefit and there's a disadvantage to the scheduling up to this point. The benefit is, obviously there were some less than opponents that they were able to just steamroll. But the good news is you have an opportunity to rebound, to gain national media attention. Not that they're not getting it, but they're not getting the respect that Georgia is. They're not getting the respect that Tennessee is. They're definitely not getting respect that Alabama's getting right now. No one expects Ole Miss. There's just no one outside of Mississippi talking about the chance that Ole Miss has to win the SEC West or the SEC championship. So you got an opportunity, and it's CBS 3:30 LSU. This is your stage. This is the game that people have kind of built up now, and that a lot of that's to do with what Brian Kelly has put together down there. But this is an opportunity for them to go out. And if they go out and steamroll LSU, I guarantee there's going to be people talking about the real deal Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss Rebels.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you hit on the fact that he has adapted his offense to fit the personnel, because a lot of coaches don't do that, Shane. Ole Miss also has got a ton of experience winning these tight ball games. Every one of these is probably going to be a tight ball game in the SEC West to date. So I'm certainly not writing off the Ole Miss Rebels from going 8-0, even though it seems like a lot of people are.
Through 3 SEC games, his first SEC games, how would you kind of evaluate Jackson at this point?
Yeah, I think Jackson's done a really good job. Running the system within the system. You don't see a bunch of screwed up plays or formations or, where it looks like he's going the wrong way or the back is. And a lot of that's, him communicating this stuff because of how we run the system and how fast it has to go. So I think he's done a great job with that. The interception was a freak interception. So I think he's done a really good job.
Just your first kind of sustained road trip, back-to-back road games. Just I know you talked about these road games with this team before. Just, are there challenges now, or how do you feel they've kind of handled those two heading into these next two?
Yeah, I think we've played really well on the road. Obviously, this is a different animal, in the first two places that we played, and so no disrespect to those places, but this will be a real atmosphere and crowd noise and for our guys to go into, and with that's a lot of challenges of just staying focused and doing things really well, and it'll be very challenging.
Yeah, hey Coach, right over here. Second top 10 team you guys welcome here in 2 weeks. Just what lessons can you take away from maybe the last time you played a top 10 team here, and just whether it's in preparation, whether it's in focus, mentality, just what kind of lessons can you take away from that last one?
Well, each week this team is learning so much and growing. Unfortunately, they learned from the Tennessee loss, and nobody really wants to be learning lessons after a loss, but they learned a lot about intentionality and purpose in terms of their preparation, and we saw that during the week, and it carried over to the way they played on the road. I think then you win on the road in the fashion that they did. You build more confidence in your football team. So I think 2 weeks later, it's I don't want to say a different team, but it's a team that has confidence. It's a team that knows that if they don't play clean, if they don't have an attention to detail, they'll have similar results that they did against Tennessee. So I guess what I'm saying is that it's not a different team, but it's a team that has grown from the last couple of weeks. And if they take that knowledge into their preparation this week and into the game and their performance, then we should have one really fine football team.
Now, how about this matchup, Shane? Mississippi State at Alabama. Both teams coming off a tough loss.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Mississippi State can give them a ball game, or, I don't know if you heard it on the last episode, Stephen Lasson said, by God, it's going to be a rough week down there in Tuscaloosa because Nick's going to be riding everybody. He'll have them locked in and make Mississippi State pay, or maybe all these cracks have burst the dam there in Tuscaloosa, and Alabama has a slip up. I don't know. What's your thoughts heading into this matchup?
You want to talk about? I think they should dub this game the rebound game. It's like, because here's two programs that had some momentum, that controlled their destiny.
Yeah.
Just needed to put a couple teams away. Both of them unable to do that. So how do they bounce back? For starters, Mississippi State has done it already. You want to talk about bouncing back? After they lost to LSU, buddy, they bounced back.
Right.
And they rode that wave. And that's kind of what we've expected here with the Pirate. And that's what's crazy about it, man. As soon as you count this damn team out, they're going to come. I mean, that's just what they are. They're ebbs and flows. And last week was an ebb. This week may flow. And if that's the case, watch out. Especially if you can catch Alabama. They're still pointing the fingers at Tennessee. They're still pointing the fingers at Ref.
Yeah.
You're bringing that baggage with you. If you can't bounce back from hell, you got Nick Saban out here talking about turning shit in. That's not Nick Saban. Mm-mm. What is that? That's not the coach I knew. That the greatest coach of all time. Well, that does nothing. Okay, yeah, turn it away, but don't talk to me. Do you talk about Mississippi State? It blows my mind that he's still looking in the rearview mirror, and that's what concerns me a little bit about this game. Just the fact that Mississippi State is one of those teams that can bounce back, and if they are hitting on all cylinders, they can beat anybody, and they're going to have a similar outcome like Tennessee if they keep looking at the rearview mirror. Now, Alabama. Again, you've got one of the greatest quarterbacks, if not the greatest quarterback in the country. He played flawless last game, and does that continue into this week? I think, there's an opportunity. I don't want to call it revenge, because when you look at close games that Alabama's had, the Texas game, obviously they had a cupcake the next week. They bounced back, sure. Everybody overlooks that. But if you don't forget, they had a shit game during Texas A&M, and there wasn't really that bounce back going into Tennessee. So what makes you think it's going to happen in week 3? So I don't know. I'm kind of torn in this thing, because I don't want to count Mississippi State out, because every time you do, they come back, but there's still that thought that, man, they got to take it out on somebody, and it may be the Bulldogs. So I just don't know. I have no idea how this game's going to play out, brother. I don't. Anybody says they do, they're lying. It could be just a revenge ass whooping from Alabama, or it could be like still, sobbing about Tennessee, and the next thing you know, you've lost 2 in a row. Could you imagine? Could you imagine, Mike, Alabama losing 2 weeks in a row to inferior opponents like Tennessee and Mississippi State? Oh.
Yeah, and one thing you didn't say, Shane, Mississippi State, most experienced team in the SEC. I realize that didn't probably show last week at Kentucky, but, man, they have, like you said, they have bounced back not only in past seasons, this season. So
yeah, they
will hopefully not be fazed by a tough loss. They've experienced that, and I know it's a monumental task, but ooh, boy, can't wait to see this one.
You mentioned the explosive plays given up on defense, specifically for pass defense. What needs to be done to limit those going forward?
Well, we limited them all year long. So we've had less explosive plays this year than we've had all year. So we certainly don't want to give them up. They did a good job of taking those wide splits and creating some matchup things because of the wide splits. So, guys got to play with better focus, better leverage. You got to be able to cover people better. I mean, it's simple as that. I mean, I can't. They are our players. We think they're good players. We think they're capable. They need to play with good technique and good focus on the little things that help you make those plays.
Coach, rushing attempts were a little bit down this week compared to the previous weeks. Was it just kind of what they were giving you, or there's just another thought process behind that? They were just a little bit diminished this week.
Yeah, well, we didn't move the ball very good this week, and I don't think it had much to do with rushing attempts. Plays were down this week, so I think that was a bigger problem because we didn't move the ball effectively.
Coach, we hear all the time about how difficult it is to play on the SEC road. What makes it so difficult to play a road game in the Southeastern Conference?
I think the biggest thing is the change of routine. I think that, I think it's, in a lot of cases, it's no harder than you make it, but there is a change of routine. I mean, to being on the road and at home, and then I think some football's kind of a creature of routine, and I think that sometimes that, until you get used to it or focus through it, I think that can have an impact.
We also got A&M at South Carolina. Shane, both teams coming off a bye, so we've not seen them in a while. A&M coming off that narrow loss at Alabama. South Carolina, the big upset over Kentucky on the road. What's some things you'll be looking for heading into this matchup?
Mike, for a couple things, I want to continue to see that maturation of Texas A&M. Mm-hmm. I felt like they, like I said earlier, they grew up a little bit during the Alabama matchup. Having a bye week to kind of just tweak. That's one thing that Jimbo's not had an opportunity. It's been kind of a gutting out project every weekend. But now he can kind of tweak. Hey, this is working. What we're doing here is working. Let's tweak a few things. Let's make some better calls, and we can win a lot of ball games. So I think that's where we're at, But with South Carolina, here's a program that, as soon as you count them out, they come back and win. Mm-hmm. Nobody's expecting them, especially me. Well, I wouldn't say that, but me especially. I did not think that South Carolina was going to go up to Kentucky and win that thing, and buddy, they did. Mm-hmm. And so, how does that continue? Does that momentum roll? I think that's a very emotional team, and when that team's emotionally pumped up and excited, and got a lot of things going in their favor, they're a danger squad to play. So, for me with South Carolina, I just got to keep seeing it, man. Got to keep seeing that momentum. I want to see the game, brother. We've been talking about Spencer Rattler since day one. He needs a game. He needs a game that we can put a little star by his name and say, this is why everybody was after him when he hit the portal. Is that this week, Mike? They got to have it. They got to have superior play, especially at quarterback there.
Yeah. And do you think there's any added pressure on A&M, Shane? They've never lost to South Carolina as an SEC opponent here. And heck, whatever we're saying, they're saying probably down there too. We win this game. We start that ball rolling. We could win out. But, man, if you lose, if you drop that first one, all of a sudden it's like, oh, God, maybe this is the worst season we've had here in some time. I mean, there's maybe a little bit of pressure there. And now that South Carolina's 4-2, the fans are more re-engaged. They're back. Yep. Not that they weren't there already, but, this I got to imagine is a sellout crowd. They're going to be rowdy, hoping that the Gamecocks get to 5-2. Shane, if South Carolina's 5-2, they're not only are they almost a lock to go to a bowl game, they're probably, we're talking New Year's Day bowl if they keep it up. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to play for both these teams. So which one do you think's got more pressure going into this matchup?
Ooh, I'm gonna say South Carolina right now, and the reason I'm saying that is they are on the edge of a top 25. Mm-hmm. They beat Texas A&M. They're top 25 in November. Yeah. Man, you want to talk about, so pressure, it comes in different ways. Pressure coming into a season, there's expectations, that's pressure, but I think the pressure for them is to continue to progress, to continue to show that they belong at the top tier of the SEC, and you can't afford to you can't get blown out. You can't, you're score difference with Texas A&M here. So I think that's where the pressure. Texas A&M doesn't have pressure. 3 losses. Nobody's talking about them anymore. They're talking about the close game with Alabama. I think expectations on Jimbo's going to come up after this game, especially when we get late November, when we start looking at some of these coaches getting fired. Not that Jimbo's getting fired, but I'm just saying if they – oh, shit, Mike. I don't know. If you drop one to South Carolina, that's a lot of pressure. So I guess – I don't know. The more I talk about this, the more – you know what, South Carolina, you're off the hook. Texas A&M has got the pressure, man. Losing another game back-to-back, having a bye week to prepare for South Carolina. This is a team no one in Texas is expecting to lose. Right. So, yeah, the more I've talked about this, I talked myself right out of it. South Carolina off the hook. Texas A&M, pressure's on you.
All right, Travis.
Jimbo, with this being the exact midpoint in the season, does it almost feel like, I wouldn't say it's a new season, but it seems like there's a little bit of a refresh part of it? Or
well, anytime you come off an off week, you get to refresh your buttons, you get to heal up, you get to get your mind clear, and where it's not just that continuous week in, week out, you got to take a deep breath and then you come back. I mean, anytime that off week comes, it feels like it is the second season. It's a new season to a point and how you go about it, but it's always been that way. I mean, it is for me is when you have off weeks during the season, whether it's 8 weeks in, 6 weeks in, 10 weeks in.
And as far as Haynes, how he played against Alabama, obviously was getting hit a lot and stuck in there.
I'm going to tell you what now, you go back and watch that film, he made a lot of plays. Made a lot of plays against some tough situations, some tough scenarios, and kept us in his legs and things he did and made a lot of really good things in that game. I mean, a few mistakes here and there, but he still did some great things in that game. And when you really watch the film and why things happened and what went on around him.
I'm sure we asked you about the storyline of South Carolina never beating Texas A&M last year, so
you need to this year as well.
Yeah, maybe we won't have to ask next year. But what does that, I guess, mean to you? And do you talk about it with your players at all about the opportunity to do something that hadn't been done?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit this morning that we haven't, and certainly that's disappointing. That's a game that we need to win at some point. But also made the point that has nothing to do, give A&M credit, but that has nothing to do with the 2022 game. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that are going to be playing on Saturday night that have never even played Texas A&M. And every year is different, but give credit to A&M. They've been better than us. I remember watching that game on TV, whatever it was, 2014, I think, when they came in here when SEC Network started. And I think it was SEC Network, right? Yeah, because it was on ESPN and then it flipped to SEC Network, and I realized I didn't have SEC Network and needed to get it that night. But I remember watching that on TV, and they've been better, and we need to play and coach a lot better than we have in the past. But certainly, anytime you can have the opportunity to do something that you haven't done, that's motivation.
Yeah, Shane, I wanted to riff off Ben's question about you guys block a punt and it's beamer ball. You complete a pass, it's beamer ball. Is there some kind of Dead Sea Scrolls compendium of special teams play that the Beamers are privy to and nobody else is? I mean, what is that? Is that like?
No, I wish it was that simple. No, I think it's just starting with my dad. He'll tell you early on at Virginia Tech they weren't very good, and special teams was a way to try and even the playing field a little bit. So when he first went to Virginia Tech and was coming in here and playing Todd Ellis and Sterling Sharp and all those guys, they needed to find a way to keep it close, and him coaching special teams was a way of doing that. And it goes back to the emphasis we put on it. We put a lot of emphasis on it here. We spend more time on special teams in practice and in meetings here than anywhere I've been, including Virginia Tech. And then our players have bought into it as well. And Pete and Stanton do a great job of trying to coach it up.
Now, final one, Shane. Vanderbilt at Missouri. Neither team has an SEC win, but this is probably one they both have circled as best shot to get that ball rolling, of course.
Yeah.
All the pressure in the world, I would think, on Eli Drinkwitz and company. Hell,
yeah.
We are never we have never even suggested we got to fire this guy, but they lose to Vanderbilt at home. Oh, I mean, I don't even know if we can defend him at that point in time. How about this stat, Shane? Vanderbilt freshman quarterback A.J. Swan.
Yeah.
There's only 2 players in major college football that have thrown for at least 100 attempts and has not thrown an interception. A.J. Swann is one of two, brother. So, I mean, he is just playing incredible for a true freshman. And I know, some luster has been lost from Vanderbilt, but that's because they played Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, just three of the best teams in the SEC back to back to back. It's almost like they're paying for that Hawaiian vacation they took week 0, isn't it?
It really is, man. I'm a little worried about them, but then they managed to score the following week. If you notice, there's a trend.
Yeah,
they get destroyed, they bounce back, they score 4 touchdowns. You score four touchdowns against Missouri, it could be a ball game. It could come down to the wire. So. Vanderbilt is not a team that Missouri can afford to overlook, but you want to talk about pressure? Losing to Vanderbilt is the ultimate pressure, brother. That puts you in the crosshairs of being the first coach fired in the SEC.
Yeah, and I forgot to even mention this, Shane. 2 weeks to prepare for Missouri's had 2 weeks to prepare. So, I mean, literally no excuse. You got to get the ball rolling. You still got matchups again with Arkansas, South Carolina. This is an opportunity here for Missouri. If they're going to punch that bowl ticket, Shane, got to win this one. It's got to start here. And if not, man, doom and gloom. Man, I'm getting depressed just talking about it. So let's end it right there, my man. You got anything else before we hop off the line?
No, man, no. It's good. Now that I finally understand how the show was going to be laid out, but it's a Wednesday. Who's listening on a Wednesday? So if I was going to screw up, today's a good day to do it. But no, brother, I'm ready to get off here. Got to get up early and walk. I was telling you earlier, I was like, I did my day 3. So if you're listening to this, I've already done day 4. And as soon as I start walking, man, it drops to 30 damn degrees outside. Where's those 70s at? I should have started this thing a lot earlier. So, but no, it feels good. I'm feeling good, and appreciate all the support online. It really means a lot to me. I want to be around for a long, long time myself and watch a lot more of these college football games. So to do that, I got to get healthy. So, brother, other than that, I've got nothing. And you talked about this weekend, not being that crazy, but talking about these games, I think we're going to have a hell of a matchup this weekend, brother.
Oh yeah.
The more excited I get about it, the more I talk about it.
Well, like I said, the SEC West this weekend's going to go a long way to determining that race. South Carolina, A&M, Vanderbilt, Missouri, these are pivotal games for all 4 of those programs. There's going to be jubilation on one side, Shane. There's going to be doom and gloom on the other, and I can't wait to see how it all plays out. We didn't even just for the rest of the SEC. I didn't even bring up UT Martin at Tennessee, Shane. I didn't think that was worth the time to hear you break that one down for 45 minutes. You know what?
No, we already talked about too much about Tennessee. We've already talked about them more than that. I'm like Nick Saban out here, but no, I'm just kidding.
But all right, brother, I appreciate you. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you for continuing to hang out with us all season long. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right, see you guys. Go Vols.